Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SNX Radio. I'm Coley, also known as ColeyUFO, and today is Thursday, so we have Jay Austin from the UK. How you doing, Jay?
Good evening, guys.
And we have an awesome guest today that I'm very excited about. Real quickly, we're just going to go through chat. Hey, Jay, once we do, I'm going to pop off because I have to hook up through the Ethernet, and I got talking, I forgot to hardwire it, so I'll just, if that's okay, I'll pop out. Sure, be fine.
Okay.
We'll get Rick out here before I do that. But yeah, so we're just gonna jump in really quick here and say hello to everybody in chat. I guess I should have started at the bottom, but Pops is so good at this. You should see how he like whirls through it. He makes me look like an amateur. But yeah, Andrew, it's great to see you. Pops, as if anybody does not know, on the second Monday and the fourth Monday of the month, Pops Cryptid Panel is on, and this Monday they're going to be on, and they've got a great guest. And then Tuesday we do Town Hall, so definitely tune in 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for Mondays. Standing Stone's great to see you. John Allen, welcome. It's great to see you. Mr. B, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in a minute. Lisa, welcome. Kurt W75, it's great to see you. Moon, hey Moon at noon, always nice. Aloria, it's awesome. Thank you for always leaving those comments too. Oh, we got Doc Skinner's in the house. I guess I didn't get a chance to see if you're still on Facebook or not, but I am curious. Amy, it's great to see you, girl. It's always nice to have you. Such a sweetheart. You guys all are. I absolutely love chat. Diana, I'm giving you credit if you look up there. I'm thanking you. We got ColeyUFO, Beam Me Up, My Starfire, Light It Up, Jade Austin, Break It Down, and Pop Scary, Break It Up. And that's, yeah. So we're totally, I absolutely just love it. It fits in well. So it's actually kind of fun. And then we got, see here, Brian, it's great to see you. Welcome. Maya, the Maya Starfire. We were just talking about you, obviously. Yeah. We'll have to do a show where we all see everybody can meet one another. Jason Finch, it's great to see you, buddy. Always nice. Jason always says hello to everybody. It's really cool that he does that. We always put a smile on everybody's face. We got Roger Holler. We were talking about you, Roger, behind stage. Love your show. If you guys have not gone over, go subscribe to Roger. He's got an excellent show. Let me see here. Yeah, like I said, Pops makes me look like an amateur doing this. We got Paradox. It's great to see you. I don't have my glasses on. I just figured that out. And let me see. Mr. Catfish. Oh, awesome. My Vlog Sunny. It's great. Hey, welcome. She's the one that posts all the shows all the time. TETs, It's great to see you. Yes, I think she asked if it was okay to post your show on Facebook. She's always posting. It's awesome to have people like that. Yeah, very cool. Are you guys still doing a show on you and Andy? Or no, yeah. The J. Michaels Show, great to see you. Kilburn, thank you. And as always, thank you so much for posting over on X. We appreciate that. Ernest, great to have you and welcome. It's great to see everybody. This is the full chat. Definitely. Catherine, everybody is piling in. So this is awesome. Let's see here. Daniel, welcome. And Valdo, hey, welcome. I haven't seen you in a minute. Danny, great to see you and have you. Welcome. And then I think, so if anybody comes in after I missed you, I'll definitely catch up with you in chat. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this over to Jay. And then as soon as I bring Rick out, I'm just going to exit real quick and then hop back in. So.
No worries. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to SNX Radio. Tonight, we're joined by one of the most controversial, debated, and fascinating figures in the history of the UFO phenomenon. Our guest is Richard Rick Doty, a retired special agent of the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations, better known as AFOSI, where he worked in counterintelligence during a period that has become deeply entwined with some of the most enduring mysteries surrounding UFOs, government secrecy, and allegations of disinformation. For decades, Rick Doty's name has been linked to some of the most talked about cases in ufology. To some, he is an insider who has provided valuable insight into the hidden world of intelligence operations and government secrecy. To others, he remains one of the most controversial figures ever associated with the UFO subject. Regardless of where you stand, there is no denying his influence on the conversation surrounding disclosure. Tonight, we're putting aside the headlines, the rumours, and the decades of speculation to hear directly from the man himself. We'll be discussing intelligence operations, disinformation, disclosure, the evolution of the UFO conversation, and how Rick views the current landscape following the emergence of modern-day whistleblowers, congressional hearings, and growing public interest in the UAP phenomenon. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or simply curious, this promises to be a thought-provoking discussion. So sit back, settle in, and join us as we welcome retired AFOSI Special Agent and former counterintelligence operative Rick Doty to SNX Radio. Welcome, Rick.
Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you, Coley. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Great introduction.
So I'm going to go ahead and just pop out real quick. I'm sure you heard Rick. I'm hardwire. I need a hardwire in, otherwise we'll have some issues. So I'll be right back. So
no problem.
Okay.
So how are you this evening, Rich?
I'm doing great. It's I guess it's afternoon here in New Mexico, but and very hot. But I guess it's about 10 or 11 o'clock there in the UK, and I'm doing fine. I hope everyone out there is doing fine tonight.
So we met in person, didn't we? What would it be? 5-6 years ago in Blackpool in England for Awakening.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah, we got to hang out and we had a great time, and we got into it back then. But tonight, I guess one of the first things I want to add is, before we get into the controversy, I'd like to start with the man behind the headlines. What made a young Rick Doty choose a career in intelligence and counterintelligence in the first place?
Well, my father was in intelligence during his career in the Air Force. My uncle, Edward Doty, who's probably famous for the Lonnie Zamora case in Socorro, New Mexico, he was in intelligence. I would like to say that I followed their footsteps, but in actuality, I didn't. I was in the regular Air Force. I got out, went to college, and in college, I was asked to do something somewhat behind the scenes in an operation that was occurring in the Seattle area. I went to college up in Tacoma, Washington. And I did that. And after I did that, I realized that my calling was probably in intelligence. And that's how I got in.
Wow. Okay. Looking back at your AFOSI career, what is the biggest misconception that the public has about counterintelligence officers and how they think you operate?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, I think most people on the outside have no idea what we do in the inside. And when they hear about an operation, and it always goes back to the Paul Benowitz case, they don't understand what we were doing and what we did. And it does, and the outsiders just don't understand the complexity of an operation involving national security and deception. Within the world of intelligence, we call disinformation and deception operation rather than disinformation. But we do use the word misinformation, which we provide a target to throw them off from something that could be classified. But I think the biggest misconception among the people on the outside is they don't understand what we do in the inside, and that everything we do, everything a counterintelligence officer does in an operation is governed by, number one, laws within the United States, military law, and also national security. Our main goal in counterintelligence is to protect national security. Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems that the people have with what we do or what they read that we do. They just don't understand it.
Yeah, and outside of you looking in, quite rightly so. What would you say is the most effective disinformation campaign you've ever witnessed that had nothing to do with UFOs? Just to give our viewers an example.
Well, I think there's a lot of classified stuff that we did that nobody knows about, and it still hasn't leaked out. There's so many operations that occurred in the 60s against the Soviet Union that were somewhat a major counterintelligence operation to fool the Russians in thinking we have something, some kind of a weapon system that we might not really have, throw them off, or some intricate operations involving radio interference during major operations, like in Vietnam. I wasn't in Vietnam, never served there, but in Vietnam, we used to broadcast the intelligence, Air Force intelligence would broadcast long streams of information in Vietnamese and Laotian and Cambodian that would be picked up by the enemy, the North Vietnamese, the Pathet Lao, and the Viet Cong. And they would think the information was real, and in actuality, it was just false information or misinformation being spread out in the battlefield.
Wow, that's incredible. What would you, if you wanted to hide something, genuinely revolutionary technology from the public for 40 years, what would that process to you look like? How would you go about that?
Well, it would depend on the target and what we were targeting. But if we wanted to convince somebody to believe in something, number one, we'd have to know something about the target. Say, for instance, somebody that we want to fool. And then we would try to provide them with realistic information as much as we can, mixed in with misinformation, and make them believe. And the best way to do that is get somebody else, their friend. Say, for instance, there's 5 people involved in this. You want to recruit 4 of those people to convince that one person the information that you're trying to spread. Because the counterintelligence officer going in there, I'm an outsider. So you want to recruit people within that small community of targets, and give them the information and target them against the other person. Say, for instance, you're in this room right now, I would recruit Jay to convince Coley that something happened, and you would convince her based on what information I give you. That's the best way to do it.
And how easy is it, I suppose, to do that? Is it strictly monetary, or you hear stories, especially with the whistleblowers coming forward at the moment, that things like blackmail are used. Tim Burchett was saying about honey traps, where they literally compromise someone and force them into doing something against their will.
Yeah, again, as I said earlier, you'd have to know something about the target. And just an example, I worked out at Groom Lake, or Area 51, Watertown, this shirt I have here, on 2 different occasions. And believe it or not, back in those days, in the 80s, Nevada, prostitution in Nevada was legal, in most counties. And what we had to worry about was military people that were assigned to the Nevada Test and Training Range, which encompassed Area 51 and Tonopah. We wanted to make sure they didn't go out and inadvertently or purposely release classified information to a prostitute. So what we did, believe this or not, and there was a great article written some years ago about this. We recruited every single prostitute on the outside of Nevada Test and Training Range, and Pahrump and Beatty and Tonopah. We had some in Warm Springs and Alamo, and they were all our sources. We paid them well to provide us information on any military person that they were servicing, so to speak. And that is, I think that in itself was probably one of the best operations. And we did end up finding military people that were trying to impress their prostitute and gave them information that was classified.
Wow.
So,
ego, right?
yeah, that was quite an operation.
Yeah. In terms of like, when you talk about budgets to this, does this factor into like defense spending? Or is it kind of like a black hole where?
Well, me being on the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, I was a counterintelligence officer. I had supervisors above me, going all the way up to the Defense Intelligence Agency, the CIA. But when you're dealing with a counterintelligence operation, the budget was always there. We never ran out of money.
Wow.
And I always wondered, even a young counterintelligence officer, I always wondered where all the money came from. I actually did. Back in the 1980s, we had a major operation where we were spending about $1,000 every other day, and in the 80s, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
that's a lot of money, and we were not only spending it in the United States, we were spending it some in Canada and some in Mexico. So you got Canadian dollars and you got the Mexico pesos.
Yeah,
and we were. And no matter what we asked for, we got. So years and years later, when I got out of the intelligence, and I was actually on a movie set when one of the advisors was a former intelligence officer, a retired colonel, and he told me that there's such a thing as a black budget, and that black budget funds highly classified special access programs, and without coming out of the defense budget. So there's always money. And now today, and I've been in Washington testifying a number of times, and they always ask me the same question is, what do you think the $1.7 trillion that the Department of Defense, or Department of War now, but Department of Defense then, lost? They've never accounted for that money. Well, I could figure anybody that worked in counterintelligence, it can answer that question by saying it was filtered or funneled into these highly classified programs, and that's where the money went.
How like, obviously when you pay someone else, obviously you guys have IRS over there. How would they get around that with a lump sum? So let's say, use the analogy of the prostitute, probably earns a monetary value. Quite modest in some respects, and say you want to get to her, how would she? Are they forced to declare that to the IRS, or?
Well, the way we did it back then was we had a form. We would pay them, say for instance, weekly. We'd pay them $50 for information, or $100, and that's a lot of money back then. They would sign a form, but we would always pay them in cash, and we would tell them that they can't tell anybody where they got the money from. And most people, if you're paying them cash, they're not going to tell anywhere where that money came from. And nobody's going to believe him even if they did say, "Oh, this intelligence officer gave it to me." They're not going to believe that. There is actually in the United States code, in the Internal Revenue Code, there is an exemption for sources of intelligence. There is an exemption. And I don't know that, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know exactly how that would work. But if you were paying somebody a lot of money, and the most I ever paid a single source was $10,000, and so I don't know how that would have worked. There's another form that you fill out because that's a lot of money. Telling them how to bypass the IRS, but I'm not sure how that worked.
What do you think in your own mind has changed between sort of then and now, and how they would approach maybe sort of protecting or paying off sources? We all know, and I think it was on Stephen Greer's Unacknowledged, where you're saying you had people in the media, you had people in various different facets to kind of, as you say, muddy the waters and mix that misinformation with maybe a hint of truth. And of course, the general public looking at that, a lot of people can't be bothered to separate the wheat from the chaff. So they ignore the story and it kind of goes away for maybe a decade, maybe longer.
I believe today there's different methods that developed over the years. Counterintelligence and counterespionage has evolved over the years. If you look back to the early days of the CIA back in the late 40s and 50s, when CIA came in existence in 1947, but they never actually got out on the road and on the street, so to speak, in the early 50s. Their methods were crude. They were relying on the OSS, or they were relying on British intelligence, which was they actually MI5, MI6 wrote the book for the CIA to get them started, so to speak, because the CIA was a neophyte intelligence agency back in the 50s. But over the years, we've learned from our mistakes, and we involved the counterespionage and counterintelligence operations. And today, I think they're probably the best of the best. And certainly money's involved in it, buying sources. But I think if you want to know, if you want to look at the best, I would like to say the United States government is, but I would say that if you look at probably the best country that has the most dignified and most thorough intelligence gathering, and that's Israel. Mossad, Mossad. They have probably we may have 50 sources inside Iran, but I bet you the Israelis have 1,000 sources inside Iran. So, and they developed them over the years and years and years and years. And that's the best way to develop a source of information within a foreign government is if you send somebody in today and trying to get information, it's going to take you a long time to establish a network inside a country. So that's why they started, years ago. And we do that, and we have done that inside some of the other countries.
Okay. I guess one of the things I want to ask, so what would you say to the outside world, the telltale signs that someone was running some sort of psychological operation rather than simply protecting, say, classified information?
Okay. Now you're speaking of something a little bit different. A psychological operation is a bit different than a counterintelligence operation. A psychological operation is targeting one person that is susceptible to psychological entanglements, we call them. And so now if you want to do a whole group of people, there's ways of doing that. I've never been involved much in the psychological operations, but the psychological operations is, number one, difficult to run. You really have to have people that are trained in psychology. We have within OSI, we had psychologists, we had a psychiatrist that we worked with that provided us information of how to deal with a certain person. But in order to do a psychological operation, you have to do a psychological assessment of a person. If I was going to do a psychological operation against you, Jay, I would have to know everything about you, your mannerisms, everything you do. If you have a fetish, if you have if you dream in a certain way, and that's a very difficult thing to do. But if you want to connect psychological with counterintelligence operations, we do those too, but it's very, very complex.
Yeah, I can imagine. I guess moving on to, let's talk about the hot topic at the moment. UFOs, or as it's been renamed several times from unidentified aerial phenomena to now the acronyms unidentified anomalous phenomena. You've watched the community for decades. What beliefs do you think researchers accept too easily without evidence?
Oh, wow. There is so much misinformation out there in the media or on the social medias that people can make up doing an AI chat or some of these artificial intelligence websites. You can make up anything, and then you spread it out there, and that's one good way that the government can hide information. They do it too. The government's doing it too. I can guarantee you the government's doing it, and they flood the media with so much unsubstantiated information that people are starting to believe things that really aren't true. And that's good for counterintelligence. Fine, if you want to. But back in my days, we didn't have a social media. We had a news. We would co-opt the local news services, and we would pay them, particular reporters, money to keep a story out or to feed a story that we wanted them to air. But nowadays, I just laugh at the stuff that people are generating on X and some of these. I'm not on X anymore, but on Instagram and TikTok, and you can make these things. There's a studio in Burbank, the old studios in Burbank. There's a building there, and I was there a few months ago. They make these incredible videos that are so live but everything in it is absolutely 100% fake. And then they put it out in a TikTok or Facebook, and people immediately believe it. Like these videos that are coming out, or pictures coming out showing these avatars with President Trump, or all that stuff is AI generated or computer generated information. And that's
crazy how quick that stuff goes viral, though, isn't it?
Oh, it does. It goes viral. People start believing it and saying, "Oh my God, look, Trump just met with these aliens," and it's just ridiculous. But people believe it.
Yeah, totally. Do you think it's somewhat easier though to, sort of today with the use of social media and AI to run maybe counterintelligence?
Oh, absolutely. I wish I had social media back in my days. It was very difficult to. It would take a long time. If you initiate a counterintelligence operation for some particular reason, first of all, people don't. This is something I always talk to people about at UFO conventions. I personally never generated an operational report. I would submit a request, and everything went to headquarters. And then everything that I did was sanctioned by this operations. You couldn't, we used to joke you couldn't go in and take a leak with an operational plan. You had to have a plan to do everything in the intelligence community. And we would ask for some leniency, and because it's local, to generate some of our own work at our local level, and they would sometimes say, "Yeah, you can do that," or "No, you can't do that." And like, for instance, the Benowitz case, there was so many agencies involved in that. It wasn't just OSI; it was DIA, it was NSA. NSA had a big part in this. We even had DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, involved in it, and then the FBI and CIA. So there were so many hands in the Paul Benowitz case. But everything was run by an operational plan. You had to do what the plan dictates.
How, I guess, using Paul Benowitz case as an example, two questions here. How how far was he, or how long was he on the radar before this counterintelligence operation ensued? And I guess, are you under any sort of time constraint to make this story go away or to clean up this?
Well, that's something, there's still a small part of the Paul Benowitz case is still classified. So I'm not going to go into any side of that. But
Okay.
the question you ask, he was on the radar before. Okay. We knew about, Rick Doty, Special Agent Rick Doty didn't know it.
Yeah.
But there was a government agency that knew about Paul Benowitz a year and a half before. Okay, that's about all I can say. Okay, when I became involved is when Paul went to the Air Force and started telling the Air Force what he was filming from his house, and what he was doing and what he thought he was seeing. That's when I became involved in it, and I didn't know anything about the other 18 months before until 4 years into the investigation.
Yeah. Were you nervous going into that case? Obviously you said you had maybe an 18-month worth of briefing beforehand.
Well, so I didn't know about that. When I got into it, Paul Benowitz went to the chief of the security force at Manzano weapons storage area. And Manzano at that time in the late 70s was the largest nuclear weapons storage area in the world. And so it was heavily, and we had a counterintelligence system to protect it. But there was when he went to the chief of the security forces and told them that he was seeing all these lights and taking pictures of this and detecting different signals coming from the mountain, and then photographing these orbs flying around airplanes over Kirtland. The flag went up. I was immediately notified. I was a counterintelligence officer for the base, and I immediately did my reports, sent them up to headquarters, and that's when the massive amount of interest was directed towards Paul Benowitz. So, nervous? No, I mean, I've done, even though I was a new intelligence officer, I had done some other operations before. Nothing as big as Benowitz, no. But I had done some other ones, and it wasn't just me. There were 9 other agents working on this case, just OSI. And we had even brought doctors in, and a psychologist, and then there were agents of personnel working from the National Security Agency and Defense Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. So there were many people involved in this. No, I thought it was a challenge. I love challenges, and I was very well trained. One of the things. It wasn't like I was they just don't take counterintelligence officers off the street and put them into a job. You got to go through a year, 14 months of training, very demanding training. And I always get people to question what I say, but the intelligence operation course is probably one of the toughest courses that anyone could go through. Not a lot of people ended up making it through it. And it wasn't like a Navy SEALs course or a SAS course, anything like that. It was psychological, because every single day of that course, they took you to your limit. They put you in a situation where you have to go right up to the maximum amount of effort to complete something, which you knew was a failure. You always are going to fail. You weren't ever going to get through it, but they wanted to grade you and watch you go through it. And there's a lot of other things that we had to go through. So when I came out, I was ready for the job.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember a story you telling me personally back in Blackpool. And I think it was, you said something along the lines of like you were made to dig a ditch and get into the ditch. You had no concept of time. You said you could hear other personnel that were, screaming and kind of going hysterical.
What they wanted to do is put you in a situation where you can't determine time. Time runs everything. Time runs your day, from wake up to going to bed. Every job you do, there's a time period involved in it. Every day there's a time period. So what they did was they put us in a hole, and it's a dirt hole. They give you a jacket, and you give you a blanket. They give you a pot to relieve yourself, a canteen of water, and back then they gave you a C rations kit. So and then they cover the hole up. So there's number one, you're in complete darkness. That's a psychological problem to you because you can't see anything.
Yeah.
Number two, you don't know how long you're going to be there. You don't know. Well, and they also take you blindfolded to this place, so you don't know where you're at. You're in a hole.
Yeah.
And so and they said you're going to stay there until we bring you out. So you have no idea how long that's going to be. You have no watch. Nothing to keep time with. So and psychologically, you start thinking, well, maybe if I count to 10 or count to 60 and put a mark here and count to 60, well, eventually you're going to end up not doing that because it's too frustrating for you. So and a lot of people didn't make it. You could hear other people yelling, "Get me out of here! Get me out of here!" I mean, I thought because of what we had done before, where there was sleep deprivation, I thought, well, hey, this is a good time for me to catch up on some sleep. So that's what I did. I just went to sleep. And then when they get you out of there, they ask you, well, put down what time you think it is. Yeah, I have no idea what time it is. And I think I was there for 40 hours. And
That's amazing.
That's a long time. Yeah, that's a long time. Anyways, that's just one of the things they test you, and that's part of the SEER part of it, or the search, escape and evasion. That what if the enemy did this to you? How you would react? After they brought you up. So that was one of the tough things.
Yeah, do you think they're looking for they're testing your mental acumen to see how far they can push you before you break? For obviously the job you were doing, okay,
So when you go out in the field, you're well trained. You're prepared for the job. They the fantastic courses they give you. So I'm at Kirtland. I have a job to do. I know how to do this job. I'm always getting assistance from my boss, and most of the people, the people within OSI that was handling the Benowitz case were civilian special agents. They were GMs, GS-12s, GMs, civil service people. And then we had a colonel that was in charge of everything. So, and they were experienced. I mean, my direct supervisor had been a OSI agent for almost 30 years, and he had been through things that no one here would believe he went through. When he was telling me stories about what he had went through during Vietnam, or even before that, during the 60s, when he was in East Berlin chasing Soviets all over the place, it was hard to understand how he made it. So he was experienced, and I had a lot of people. Unfortunately, I had a lot of people helping me with that case.
Wow! If AFOSI were tasked today with monitoring the UFO community, what would they be looking for, essentially? Can you say?
Well, they would probably be doing the same thing we did. They're OSI. Within OSI, there's a branch called Special Projects, which I worked in. Special Projects. Their task is protecting special access programs.
Okay.
If you go to Lockheed, Grumman, Boeing, any of these defense contractors that have DARPA projects, you're going to find an OSI agent, a counterintelligence officer, protecting that particular operation administratively and then field wise. And maybe there's more than one.
Yeah.
Lockheed, there's probably 10 or 12 of them. And so they're protecting special access programs.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, they will go out on the limb to do virtually anything to protect a special access program from being compromised. And we did the same thing during my time, and I'm sure they're doing the same thing today.
Do you think that's kind of what Dave Grush has alluded to in Anna Paulina Luna when they're saying about, these whistleblowers coming forward and they're being scared off by certain facets of the intelligence community? Do you think that that's a big part of what's going on at the moment with some of these whistleblowers scared to come forward?
Absolutely. I know of two whistleblowers. I know one very well. The other one I'd already met when I was in Washington. But they have been frightened, and it wasn't so much as we're going to kill you or something like that, but we're going to ruin your life. And this one whistleblower who was a military officer who shot down a UFO. He shot down a UFO.
Wow.
And recovered, and it was recovered, and it was an extraterrestrial craft. He was an F-22 pilot. His story, and Luna and everyone up there within the House and some Senate side of it have heard his story. So it's not, he's told his story. He just hasn't told it in the public.
Yeah.
What they did to him. He'd been married for 14 years, and his wife had been in the service too. She had been a military officer, but she got out. He stayed in, and she got out.
Right.
And she went to work for an airlines. They started a rumor. The government started a rumor that she was having an affair, and that information was leaking to him. On the other side of it, they started a rumor through her that he was having an affair, and it destroyed their marriage. Even though I believe him. He wasn't having it, and he didn't later think that she was. But that's just something that the government could do to destroy a marriage. And I think that would probably upset me to the point where I would go out and talk. I think it would be a reversal effect on me, but there's other things that they could do, and I'm sure they're doing it. I personally never did it. Now, when you're trained, one of the things when you're trained in counterintelligence, there are things that you might have to do. It was called executive decision, is that you might have to shoot somebody, but that's almost entirely in wartime.
Yeah.
If you're overseas, if you're in East Germany, or in the Soviet Union or someplace else, you might have to do something like that, but not in the United States. I've never heard of anything like that. I was never involved in anything like that during my time in counterintelligence.
Yeah. I suppose it's, obviously, as I say, we've hung out. I enjoyed your company. You're a great human being, but how much of this kind of conflicts with your own conscience when you're asked to do some of this stuff? Or do you have to suspend that completely?
Yeah, that's the problem with counterintelligence, because there are things that I did that I wish I didn't have to do.
Yeah.
But it was my job to do it, and I did it, and I did it well. But if I had to do it over again, I probably would have changed things. I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it, but there's always there may be a different way of doing something. During the Paul Benowitz operation, it was easy for us to convince Paul of anything because he believed in UFOs. He was a MUFON and APRO investigator. He was very thick-headed because you couldn't sit there and talk to Paul and tell him that, maybe this isn't this. No, it's this.
Yeah.
This is the truth. And you couldn't convince him otherwise. So, that helped us. I didn't have to do anything exotic to convince him of the way I wanted him to think or act. But there are some things that we did during that, and I've talked about this at UFO conventions and other things. We had a contract with Paul, a written contract that we could do all these things, and Paul signed off on them. And one of the things was that we could enter his house to monitor the equipment that we put in there.
Right.
And the agreement was that if we went into his house when he wasn't there or his wife wasn't there, we would tell him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that didn't work that way, because we went in his house a lot more times and we never told him. And we placed things in his house that he didn't know we placed in there.
Yeah.
He knew we were placing things in there. And our agreement was we were going to tell him that we were placing, a covert camera here or whatever, electronic devices. And most of that was done by our technical services people, the guys that are electronics experts. I didn't personally go in and do this, but they did. And they would come back, do a report, and it'd be a highly classified report, and we wouldn't have, we couldn't tell anybody of what we did. And that was a betrayal of Paul's trust to me, because Paul trusted me. I mean, explicitly, me and some other agents too. And there were some other agents he didn't trust, and those agents didn't work directly on the operation after they had problems with Paul. Paul had problems with them. So some of the things, it's tough to do, but you have a job to do, and you accept it when you apply for the position of a counterintelligence officer, and you're going to do what you're supposed to do and what the operation plan dictates, and so therefore it's not always going to be what you want to do, or it might not rest well with your conscience afterwards.
Yeah. I think this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions I see sort of on X or over on Twitter with Lou Elizondo, because he's come forward and said he was counterintelligence for the US military. There's a lot of people. You've got some that are in the Lou Elizondo camp. You've got others who think him and the likes of Christopher Mellon are actively running misinformation, as you said earlier. It's so hard to know, especially with the major players at the moment, who to trust and who not. You've got Dr. Greer speaking about Project Bluebeam. You've got Tom DeLonge talking about evil beings. It's like everyone sort of splintered off into these different camps and fighting each other. And I guess, and one of the things I've spoken to Coley about off air is be objective, but keep an open mind until you've got all the pieces of the puzzle, or as many as what we're going to get publicly. And I think, it's like famously, rather than sort of focusing on the information that's coming out, there's so much bitching and whining in these different camps going at each other. You said yourself, you come off X. And I know Coley's experienced the trolling side of it as well.
Oh God!
But it's it is. Do you think some of that's deliberate to kind of like while you're not paying attention over here, you're all squabbling over there? Do you think that's part of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And unless a person has gone through the counterintelligence training and counterespionage training, deception operations, psychological operations, all these different operations that encompasses counterintelligence, you don't realize how complex and complicated it can be. And there are times right now, I don't know who to believe. A lot of people say, well, we don't believe Rick Doty because he was a counterintelligence officer. Well, that was, I left counterintelligence in 1988. I've never worked in counterintelligence since then. I've worked for Dr. Putoff for 12 years at DARPA project. So I've seen things that I didn't see while I was in counterintelligence. I mean, I knew in counterintelligence from 1979 on, I knew the extraterrestrials were real. They visited Earth. We had crash sites. I visited the crash site.
Oh,
what happened? I don't know. He must have. We'll wait for him to pop back on. But I don't know what just happened. Oh, here we go. I think he just got her back in. He probably got kicked off.
Yeah.
There we go. Should be. There he is.
I don't know what happened.
Welcome back.
I think OSI is watching you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't have said it.
No.
But getting back to that right now, I know the story is real. I mean, I know we have been in contact with extraterrestrials since 1947. I know we have crash saucers. I know we have extraterrestrials. I know while I was at Area 51 that we had what they called their visitors. I know one had escaped. I mean, I know all this stuff. All this stuff that now they're understanding or realizing in Washington and the Senate and the House. A lot of us out here, the former counterintelligence officers who are still around, still kicking, still alive, we know that all that's true.
Yeah.
But what part of that is going to be released? Well, I can tell you right now that anything pertaining to a special access program or sensitive compartment information of what we call Title 50 information will never, ever be released. The government's never going to release that. Now, what we're getting now from the government are just isolated incidents and collection of videos and that they've collected. What we are not being told, and there's a reason for it, is when the government collects something that is extraordinary, they're not going to tell you how they collected that. That's a source and a means, a source, a platform they're collecting it from. And that's why a lot of these documents that's coming out are heavily redacted. Yeah. I like to tell this story. When in 2022, the government asked me to come to Washington, D.C., the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. Yeah. They wanted to talk to me about what I did in the past. And so I did. I went there. I spent several days at the Pentagon. And the first day I was there, they told me, okay, you have your clearance back. You can talk classified to us. Yeah. They give me a document. They give me a 65-page document that's heavily redacted. And they put it in front of me and they said, do you recognize this? And I look at the top of it and my name's there. I said, yeah, this is a report that I did in 1980, which would have been 42 years ago. Yeah, I said, and so they started asking me questions about it. And I said, well, wait a minute. Don't you have one that's unredacted? I can't remember what I did 42 years ago. And they tell me, this is Department of Defense Inspector General. Yeah. We can't get it. OSI won't give it to us. Wow. I said, wait a minute. You're the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, and you can't get an OSI report? Nope, they won't give it to me because it's a special access program. Yeah. So I said, well, I'm not sure if I can tell you what's in here if I can remember it. He said, no, you're clear. You're clear. Yeah. So we went over it. Jump ahead to September of 2022. I was back there for something entirely different. DOD finds out I'm there. They call me back to the Pentagon. They give me my report. This time it wasn't redacted. None of it was redacted. And we went over it. And it pertained to UFOs, pertained to an incident that happened in 1980 that I investigated. The main player's still alive. We went over the whole thing. But they told me, well, you can't talk about this. We just want to know that everything that's in this report is real and not disinformation. Now, this presents another problem. Does the government disinform counterintelligence officers? Yeah. Are we back in the days when we're operating under a operations plan that was generated at the Defense Intelligence Agency or OSI or somebody in Washington, someplace? Yeah. Is a lot of the information coming down to us isn't really real, maybe that's disinformation. Well, I can look back. Of course, at the time, I didn't know it. Through my time up to 1988, I wouldn't even suspected it. But looking back, I realized that probably some of the information that was contained in those operation reports weren't really true. They probably just put that in there so it would motivate me and motivate the other agents into continuing what they want us to do.
Yeah. Do you also think there's an element of that they tell you, so if you do blab someone, they know exactly who it's come from? Do you think there's an element of that exists in what they're saying? Because obviously, pertaining to, say, like Bob Lazar's story, was Bob hired knowing that one day he would perhaps blab to, say, George Knapp in 1989 on Las Vegas News?
They keep track of you. You sign a memorandum of agreement. When I left in 1988, I signed one, and mine expired in 2002. So after that, I could talk about most of what I did, but not special access programs. I have never talked about, well, I've talked around some of them, but I've never actually talked about some of the really, really dark secret operations that I did that are still considered special access programs. The one time that I did in 2003, the FBI visited me and took my computer, took my my laptops, but then gave me my computer back. But they said, well, your laptop's destroyed. And they gave me a check. And I actually have a copy of the check. I always show this at UFO convention. See, the FBI gave me $650 because they took my hard drive and they wouldn't give it back to me. But so I know enough not to talk about some things. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you say, for instance, I have like on our drive, Jay, that you took me on, I really appreciated that. Yeah. If I told you some highly classified stuff, and then you went back and you told somebody else about what I told you, but you never connected it to me, there's a way, if you gave them certain information, they're going to figure out it came back to me. So, they're going to connect the dots, so to speak, because believe it or not, the government is smart in a lot of areas. They're dumb in some, but they're smart in most areas. And if they want you, they're going to get you. And so you have to be very careful of what you say and what you can say, what you shouldn't say. But they can connect the dots, so to speak.
I've got to ask you, and this is a question, I guess, for our viewers, is can you describe or maybe give an example of, you're talking about special access programs, SAPs or SAPs, the difference between something that's an unacknowledged special access program in comparison, because it sounds very compartmentalized and very sort of clandestine, the special access program, but then relate that to unacknowledged special access programs, which I'm guessing the levels of security for that are, off the scale, so to speak.
Yeah, there's when it's unacknowledged, it is a special category of that. It is referred to as silver something, Silver Bay, Silver Lake, silver something. It's a layered security system whereby there's at least 3 layers of security to get down to what this is. And it's only a need to know on a need to know basis. Say, for instance, when I worked for Dr. Putoff had I call it a widget. Okay, he has a widget. They gave him the widget. He knows that that's an extraterrestrial widget. He doesn't know what craft it came from. He doesn't know what alien civilization, but he knows it's a widget. He has to figure out what this widget is. So he puts it through all these tests. Now, there's somebody else that's working on this widget and the container that this widget went into. That's over here. the Institute for Advanced Study doesn't know anything about this one. That's compartmentalization. That's the unacknowledged part of it. And then there's somebody else like Lockheed that has the actual craft that these two things came out of, and they're trying to reverse engineer whatever that is. So that's a special example of a special access program, a later special access program.
I guess that's why, when we had these congressional hearings, I might add the first ones publicly in 70 years. I guess that's why Congress was so pissed, because if there's no congressional oversight to this, then, like you said, you were using the Donald, I think it was Rumsfeld who said about the trillions of dollars that had gone missing, that couldn't be accounted for. That's, it's a lot of money at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's probably more than that, but if you go all the way back. But if you stop and think that and this is something that's been discussed in Congress many times, from 1952 to 1959, 7 years that there was a special budget that was appropriated by Congress that nobody knew about. The American public didn't know about it. It was secret. It was going to the intelligence community, and they would just give them the check, basically a blank check, and the government would spend it, and almost all that money went into the UAP program, the UFO program. Back then, they didn't have UAP. So jump ahead. Over the years, now there's, they're saying like a $1.7 trillion that can't be accounted for because the Department of Defense budget is never audited. They have their own. They have a DoD audit agency, but they don't audit the Department of Defense because they're afraid to. And that is upsetting to me. And also, getting back to your question, the American public deserves to know a lot of this information about UFOs, UAPs. Not everything. I mean, I can understand that special access program or what we learned from the extraterrestrials, the bodies, and what we found in some of the crafts that nobody wants to talk about. For instance, there was a craft, and this only because Luna mentioned it briefly. There was a UFO craft recovered, and there were human bodies found in it. So, what are they doing with the human bodies? Or what are they? How did they find these bodies? Or nobody's.
Was that the case in Aztec, New Mexico, I believe?
No, that was a case in South America.
Right,
it was a South American case, so there's
a dark side.
Things that you don't want. There's a very dark side. I don't like to talk about the dark side. There's a lot of things, not a lot, but there's things that I learned and I saw that I don't want to talk about it. And then if you connect the possibility of a particular alien race, the Ebens, the 1947 crash, we had one in captivity for 5 years. He told us a lot of things. What if he told us that 2,000 years before they planted somebody on our planet to manipulate us in certain ways, and maybe that person's Jesus? So religious groups would connect that to being Jesus, and imagine what would it do with the world religions. So there's a lot of things that I just that could be true. That I wouldn't talk about. And there's other thing, the hideous side of it. There's a whistleblower out there. There's a female. She's a retired master sergeant in the United States Air Force. I worked her case in the beginning. She was being abducted. And at the time, I knew very little about abductions. She would come and tell us these stories, and I think she was nuts. You're crazy. Send her over to the psych on the base. But then the more we delved into it and we actually conducted investigations, we found her story to be absolutely truthful, because we had the occasion to almost catch the extraterrestrials that were doing this to her. And they
Wow.
were they were taking her fingernails off. She would come back from these abductions to bleeding from the eyes and bleeding from the vaginal area and taking her toenails off and just hideous things they were doing to her. And we finally, and because of her, there was the United States government developed some very unique countermeasures that I can't go into details on. And she's a whistleblower. She sat in a skiff with 4 members of Congress and 1 member from the Senate, and she told her story. And when they came out of that skiff, none of those representatives would want to talk about it. They were extremely upset and emotional over what her story was. Now, she's just one of probably a lot of other ones that have experienced horrible things from these.
There was a good documentary come out probably about 10 years ago. A guy called Richard D. Hall did a show on it was human mutilations and the NATO cover-up. And he was speaking to a whistleblower that was based in South Wales that was recruited. And he was on like find and secure mission, one, secure the craft, in which he said there would be a cleanup crew where the US soldiers would come and take everything away, which if it's NATO, you figure that's plausible. But he said this whistleblower that he did vet and verified seemed to suggest that, you know, he said what you see in popular culture in terms of, you know, on the TV documentaries and movies, he said, no, it's nothing like that. He said this thing that they seen was incredibly fast, incredibly strong, powerful. You had to have cover. And in his own words and verbatim, he said it looked like a devil. And he said there was all sorts when they looked inside some of these crafts. So without going in too much into detail, because it's a little bit macabre for the audience, that, you know, I know we spoke about that on the personal level, I think in Blackpool when we were having dinner. And I, you know, you said to me quite stoutly back then, you were like, that side of stuff will never see the light of day. It's far too scary and dark for people to even wrap their heads around that, let alone the UFO subject. And, you know, there being other beings and maybe some of them look like, you know, like us. So yeah, I am aware of that side of it. It's a little bit scary. Maybe, you know, as Lou and other people have alluded to, perhaps, you know, we're not necessarily top of the food chain. And maybe that's something they would want to keep from humanity, you know, that we are the apex species in the universe. So I have sympathy with that side of things and keeping that from the public. But how much, I guess I want to ask, how much of the UFO puzzle are the general public not getting at the moment? Are we close, as in the people that are researching evidence-based and whatever else, or are we still missing major chunks of this?
Well, I think the information's out there, but the public just doesn't know what to believe and what not to believe. And there's a good reason why. I think the government is muddying the water. But if we look at Lou and many others who have already talked, you know, one of the probably the one person who framed the stories about UFOs going all the way back to the 50s and 60s was the late Wendell Stevens. Wendell he was on one of the first DART teams, downed aircraft recovery teams, the crash recovery teams. He had a plethora of knowledge about the subject, and he would always share it, not publicly but privately, to a group of people at UFO conventions. He would always get a room. We'd go up the room and he'd show us something, a film or something. He had a great deal of knowledge, and so didn't Robert Dean. Robert Dean was also his friend. Robert Dean was a really close friend of mine.
Great.
Yeah, great guy. The government did him wrong on several different occasions, but he stuck to his story, and he had two sources that he never mentioned. He talked about them, but he never mentioned the names. But he shared them with me once. We were up in Seattle at a UFO conference in Seattle some years ago, and this guy was Robert introduced me. He was at then, and this was 15 or 20 years ago. The guy was about 90. I can't remember. It was 90 or 95. He was old. That he actually was Robert Dean's boss at SHAPE headquarters in Belgium when Robert had access to that information. So he verified that information that Robert talks about in that document. And there's a lot of other things that Robert talks about privately that he didn't talk about in the open. Yeah. But Robert had also, and Window did too. Window tells a story and I can tell it now because he's passed away, and it's happened way back in the 60s. His team went to a crash site, and it was in Nevada, southwestern Nevada, almost right on the California state line. And the crash, there were bodies on the outside of the craft. And so the team came in to recover putting the bodies in the body bag. And then they eventually Window and another man dressed up in a radiation suit, that back then, not a hazmat suit, and went into the craft to see if there was anything else in there. And when they got into the craft, one of the creatures grabbed Window, picked him up, and Window said this creature was not more than 5 foot tall, but had enormous strength, picked him up and threw him against the side of the craft. Now, Window didn't have any weapons on him, and so it was a defense mechanism, I guess, on this extraterrestrial. They eventually subdued him. I don't know how they did that. Window never went into it. But Window thought about it later, and he told us, well, this entity, this creature, is on a foreign planet. 5 of his comrades are dead out there. Yeah. And these creatures, humans, are coming in, and he's defending himself. But he didn't hurt Grant. He bruised him. He bruised his shoulder at Windows. Yeah. But this is one thing I try to tell people. When we talk about extraterrestrials, everyone seems to try to relate the mannerisms or the thought process to a human. Yeah. These creatures some of them are millions of years more advanced than we are. Yeah. We have no idea where they came from, what their biological makeup is, and how their brains work or how they think. So we couldn't possibly understand how they think or why they act the way they do.
Evil's kind of in the eye of the beholder, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And another thing that just came into play, Dr. Putoff wrote a paper about it, is interdimensional beings. Now, there's a lot of really smart people out there that talk about interdimensional beings. And some of these have a really, Dr. Putoff does too, some of these scientists think that these interdimensional beings are beings that are coming from a vast distance away, and maybe they have some unique way of traveling, but eventually, it's going to take them a while to get to here. Yeah, however long it is. And when they're here, where do they live? Maybe they have the ability to move from one dimension to another, stay in our area, so to speak, rather than traveling all the way back to their planet. And I think that's very a common sense approach to understanding what an interdimensional being could be.
Yeah. Do you think that's what we're seeing kind of play out in places such as Skinwalker Ranch? I know we've got Bridlington and Benton. We had Paul Sinclair on a couple of weeks ago. There seems to be these areas around the world that every type of phenomenon seems to be concentrated. Now, I know when I spoke to Barry Fitzgerald, he thinks it's one thing wearing many different masks. So the interdimensional theory, he's almost suggesting we give it sort of the archetype, if you will. So these people that claim to see Bigfoot, werewolves, Dogman, nuts and bolts UFO to the spheres of light that seem to be intelligent in their own right. Do you think that's part of this? Because it seems like we're dealing with, so you've got the advanced civilization that maybe a civilization existed on this planet before we did. You've got things being seen in our oceans. You've got places such as the Mariana Trench that are so deep, we don't know. We probably know more about space than we do. Then you've got the interdimensional theory, and then you've got obviously the alien beings or the Ebens coming from space and other galaxies. Do you think there's several different things at play here that we are dealing with at the moment?
I do. I actually believe, I'm a strong believer that there was a civilization on Earth billions of years ago. If you look at Australia, if you go to Indonesia and Malaysia, there are signs of remnants of radiation that was dormant. Now, if you're talking about ionized radiation, gamma radiation, it takes 25,000 to 100,000 years before it becomes neutralized. Scientists have found some remnants of radiation in some of these places in Australia and in Indonesia and Malaysia, and they can't understand it. There was and this soil that they're finding it in are billions of years old. How can there be that? So they think, and I do. I'm a believer that there was civilization on Earth, and they might have had a nuclear war 2 billion years ago on this planet. And and some people laugh at me when I say this, but I think that they realized that the better place for them to adjust to live is in the ocean.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the ocean. And so I think there's a civilization. I have a good friend, Admiral Carpenter. He was a submarine commander, Navy submarine commander for 20 some years, retired admiral. He's been on Gaia. I've been on Gaia. I have over 200 shows in Gaia.
Yeah.
He talks about a incident when he was out in the Indian Ocean many years ago. The Indian Ocean west of Australia, west of Perth, is really a dormant place. There's no shipping traffic in there. So the military, both Australian military, the British, India, and the United States, they conduct war games and operations down in there in that area because there's no other ships in that area.
Yeah.
They were down there in an operation, and his particular submarine went really deep. And now, how deep a submarine goes is supposedly classified, but this is about 4,000 feet, and I think that's probably the limit. But I'm not saying that, and I hope I'm not disclosing any classified. But when they were down there, they were able to see lights at the bottom of a trench that was 16,000 feet down. They certainly couldn't go down there, but there was a lot of lights down there, and he was convinced. And then like months later, a couple of months later, they started seeing these orbs coming out of the ocean.
Yeah,
these orbs. And so he's convinced that there's a civilization down there. And based on what he told us and what other people have said, there's many other people out there, Admiral Claudette and many other people out there, military people. There's I can't remember the highest ranking guy in the Navy, E9, whatever. I can't remember, Master Chief Petty Officer, something like that. He spoke at a UFO convention about an incident where they were testing a deep submersible vehicle, and he was involved in that. And it went down, I don't remember, 10,000 or something, 20,000 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
And there was 2 people in this deep submersible submarine. And this was like in the 90s or late 90s or 2000s. And they saw lights at the same location. He said there was a city down there. In fact, there's a radio transmission that they were calling to the ship above on the top of the ocean. There's a city down here. It looks like there's a city down there, something to those effects.
Yeah.
So, I think that it's very possible. And then considering all these stories that other submarine people are talking about from the 50s and 60s on, that they were seeing things down there that weren't explainable, not squids or whales, but just objects that were going faster underwater than anything else that we had the technology to do. So I believe that. And then another story, and I actually just came back. Not just came back. I was up in the Northwest in April about the story about these 2 hunters, very credible people. They're both police officers. Both of them had been in the military before. They were hunting in northern part of Washington State, almost on the border, British Columbia. They see this craft come in, a flying saucer. That's their words, flying saucer. Flying saucer comes in and lands on the other side of this little hill, and they're in a mountainous area of northern Washington. And they thought, wow, wonder what that could be. Now, they'd both been in the military. They both had been police officers for a long time. They knew what helicopters were. Both of them had flown in helicopters. They didn't think it was a helicopter.
Yeah.
So as they thought maybe it had crashed, so they were working their way to this. And while they were working their way, they saw this bipedal hairy creature about 8 foot tall come at them.
Wow.
And of course, they thought, well, got to be a Bigfoot.
Yeah, right.
They didn't shoot at. They had rifles. They were hunters.
Yeah.
But they backed off. They retreated to another area, and they watched this. And this creature was picking things up, and they couldn't really tell what they were picking up. And then they went back the same way they came. And about 45 minutes later, they see this flying saucer leave. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that these Bigfoot are really extraterrestrials? Wow, maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know. We went up there and talked to them, myself and some other guys, and they were thoroughly convinced that they connected the Bigfoot to that craft. So, what, I don't know. And that's not the only story. There's many other stories that connect Bigfoot with UFOs.
I've heard a few of these, and it's weird because, like, on some of the programming I've seen when I've watched these Bigfoot shows or the Sasquatch shows, and there always seems to be these orbs, these white balls of light that are also seen moving independently through the forests and then into the sky, and boom, they're away. So I think there's maybe a misconception there about what we're dealing with. And my argument, I know people sort of liken Bigfoot to Gigantopithecus, and we've recently discovered Gigantopithecus wasn't bipedal. But at the same time, it's like, we've not found any bodies. We can find the bones and fossils of things from the prehistoric age, such as dinosaurs and unknown species that we're discovering, yet we're yet to find a body, or at least the bones of a Sasquatch. And you're thinking, just imagine, something that's 8 to 9 feet tall, finding the femur for something like that. It'd be huge. You'd know straight away it's not human. So, that's always my argument when people sort of throw out the baby in the dishwater, as we say in the UK, when it comes to Bigfoot and the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I think there's so much that, we're too segregated. And I've said this to Coley before now. You've got your ghosty guys, your poltergeist guys, your Bigfoot guys, your elves and ancient folklore. Well, on some level, if it's all kind of connected, and it's kind of like we're missing out on through being so segregated through maybe ego, that a lot of this is connected on some sort of, sub-level form. Do you think there's anything to that, from maybe your background?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot that we just don't understand about the extraterrestrials. And I think there's more than one, and people tend to connect an extraterrestrial with all the other extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Back in my days, back in the 80s, we knew there were 5 extraterrestrial races that had visited Earth, or had visited Earth. Now, my knowledge and my briefings on the subject only went back to 47. Now, I understand now maybe we knew about them way before that, but I think they connect one like the Eben with everyone else, but we know that there's a reptilian. We know that. That's a fact. That there's a reptilian race. There's a Nordic type that they look similar to us, although their eyes are completely different. Their ears are different than ours. They don't have a tongue, but I mean, they look like us on the outside. And isn't it possible that maybe they can appear different to a human than they really are? Maybe, we're human. I mean, we've only been around for, 25 to 30,000 years. They've been around for a million or, 500,000, whatever it is. Maybe they can manipulate our minds into thinking that we're looking at something different. But maybe they don't look the same way to you that they do to me or somebody else. And I think there's so many stories out there that one particular one is the incident in Mississippi years ago where these 2 fishermen are on the pier. I can't remember the name of that incident, but I'm sure your viewers remember that. When they isolated those 2 men, they described 2 different beings, but there was only one being. One interpreted differently than the other did because they do 2 different pictures. And so that's just an example. Now, I saw that on your chat there was a good question there, a good statement about during a nuclear detonation. We know this. There's been many papers written from when we were doing above ground nuclear detonations that when a nuclear detonation occurs, it's very conceivable that dimensions are opened. And there are numerous stories from the Nevada test site, where we did most of our above ground detonations, where orbs and other strange things came out of that detonation. At the time of the detonation, even at Trinity, there's a guy, he's dead now, but he's a rancher. He was a rancher down near where the Trinity site occurred. He was a rancher, Brigham, New Mexico, and he passed away some years ago. But I listened to him talk about when he didn't know what this was, but he was out that morning feeding his cattle or doing something in the barnyard, and the Trinity site detonated, which was about 25 miles from where he was. But he didn't know what it was. He had no idea what it was, but he saw these big orbs, the balls of light coming out and going up into space. People that studied these nuclear detonations, the actual detonation of a nuclear device when it went critical wouldn't cause something like that to happen. So what did that happen? Maybe we opened up a fabric of space. Maybe we opened up another dimension. There was a paper written many years ago, back in the 60s, about the possibility when a detonation occurs, and even Oppenheimer thought about this, that we could open something that we shouldn't have opened. And that could be another dimension.
Well, you're splitting the atom, aren't you? In effect, when there's a nuclear detonation, Do you think this is kind of along a similar vein to maybe what CERN is trying to produce with the particle accelerator?
I think there's things that are happening at CERN, and I've been to CERN.
Yeah.
When I worked for Dr. Putoff, I went there twice. And I'm not a scientist, but I went
Yeah.
there to observe and to help. I speak German. So I'm helping sometimes with language. But I think there's things happening down there that they're not going to tell us about. There's been 4 recently in the last 5 years, there were 4 experiments that they don't want to talk about. They're considered
I was going to
classified.
say a couple of those I read went wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what did they find? Or what if they opened something, the fabric of space, and something came out?
Yeah.
And that's what some people think, that they did something and they opened up and now we got whatever, maybe a demon. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to speculate on that.
I guess, going back to Blackpool when we sat down for dinner and, we spoke that there has been a plan for this since that 2017 New York Times article. Because initially you had the 3 videos, the forward-looking infrared, tic-tac, you had the gimbal to go fast. But they purposely stayed away from using the language of the occupants, of who was driving this craft. And then kind of since Dave Grush has come forward, we're talking, there's a new buzzword, NHI, going around at the moment. And then even just to a week to 10 days ago when he was stood on Capitol Hill, and there's him, James Fox, Tim Burchett, Moskowitz, all saying that the government's aware of 2 ET races, and now is the time for all this to come out. Why is this? I guess you kind of like a loaded question, but why is the time now for all this to come out when you've had decades and decades of secrecy going back to the Robertson panel, Project Blue Book, probably previous to that? And even the job you were doing with, the likes of Paul Bennewit, if they were going to that level back then, why now is all this being accelerated?
I think it's because of social media. The word's out there. Everyone, almost, I wouldn't say every household, but almost every household has a computer that has some kind of social media on it.
Yeah.
And people that are reading this now are interested. I mean, I have 2 friends here where I live. They're in their 80s, and they're relatively new to social media, and they're fascinated by it. They never thought about it before.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 80 some years old, and they never thought about that. They never thought about extraterrestrials, or now they're so fascinated with it, they can't get enough of it on social media. And I think that's the reason. Unfortunately, there's too much junk about and falsehoods on social media. If we could just have some website that is only that only puts out the real good stuff. I mean, the truth. But I don't know if that's feasible. I know the House of Representatives. There's certain members of the House is trying to do that.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say earlier when we were talking about interdimensional extraterrestrials, there were certain members of the House and the Senate that were given a briefing in a skiff. And one of them talks about it, that they left crying. They didn't realize the complexity of the subject. I think that's the only thing one of them said was, and that's all they said, because they were sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
And that's the dangers of the subject. You ask why don't we know? Why isn't government forthcoming? I can tell you, and you don't have to believe me. There's other people who are talking about it. There's hostile extraterrestrials out there. They're not all malevolent like Steven says. And I used to work for Steven, so great guy, a wonderful human being. He's really a nice, but he sometimes goes in one tangent that I wouldn't want to go to, and but there are hostiles, extraterrestrials out there, that the ones that are doing these horrible things to humans during abductions, they're not our friends. And some of the horrible things that happened that I don't want to talk about in the past would cause somewhat of a panic, I think. And I know people say, no, the public can handle it. No, they can't.
No, they can't.
They can't handle higher gas prices, or they can't. You know, that guy that was ranting and raving about the war in Iran, and nobody wants war, but you know, no, the people, you can't judge.
They lose their minds, wouldn't they? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But I guess, you know, going back to what you said, is in the reason for this coming out now and the increase of social media. But you also said before that if you were running active misinformation, then social media would be a great tool for that. So, I'll go back to some of the quotes, maybe people such as Ross Coulthard, James Fox, Lewsman. And this date keeps being mentioned between, 2027 and 2030, that there's going to be some sort of big event that happens that we're not quite prepared for. Now, do you believe, obviously, I'm guessing if you do know stuff, you can't go into detail, but have you heard the same things in the channels you move in?
Yeah, I've heard the same. I've heard this. I've heard that something is supposed to happen between October of this year and August of next year, of 2027. I don't know what it is, other than I believe a psychic who is a person that I've strongly believe in. She's been a psychic for a long time. She works for Gaia. She thinks that it's going to be a revelation, that's going to occur, a revelation to Earthlings. I mean, something's going to happen, and it's going to tell the Earth that, we're real, we're extraterrestrials, and we're real, and here we are, and now it's our show, whatever that may be. I wish I knew. But I don't, if I knew, I don't know. I probably would hint more because I'd want everybody to know, but I don't know. I don't know for a fact. I just heard other people talk. I trust some really good experiencers and psychics that they've been so right in the past about a lot of things, and then the remote viewers. I'm not a remote viewer, but I am friends with many of them that are the former military. Some of them are former military, some of them aren't. But they have remote viewed some things that are very disturbing.
I've heard similar vein from some of the people I mix with, and as far back as looking at 18 months, 2 years ago, I was told by someone that I can't use his name, but I was told there's a reason why this has to come out now. And more recently, you've heard people such as Ross hypothesize about catastrophic disclosure over organized disclosure. And if, say, hypothetically something was to show up, and the governments are forthcoming with this information, people would, probably lose complete trust in the government, which we're kind of already getting to that tipping point now. So think, I guess if that was to happen, let's say independent style craft mothership shows up, how do you explain that to the public when the public, all the rumors and going back to Roswell, maybe the Mussolini craft retrieval that was before that, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of awkward questions asked about this.
When I was in Washington, the last time I was in Washington was 2 years. I'm trying to think of what. Yeah, we're 2026 now, right? Yeah, 2 years ago, there was a paper written by somebody within the government, a proposal on release, and the proposal of information details the chronological order of a United States government involvement with extraterrestrials from 1947 on. Now, I know people are saying, well, we had contacts in 41 and 33. Well, I don't know about it. And I don't think the government has a great deal of knowledge about that, but we know a lot from 47 on. And I think that they're going to start with the Roswell, the truth about Roswell, and then maybe Kingman, the Kingman crash. That was in the paper that I saw, and some others, and slowly integrate the history into the public, and then eventually a little bit more at a time. But again, they're never going to talk about the special projects. They're never going to talk about what we got from the extraterrestrials, what we have reverse engineered. They're never going to talk about that. But even if they just give us the U.S. government's history, I think that would satisfy the majority of the people.
Yeah, I think so too. Whether that comes or not, I'm told it is. I'm told certain things like Trump's got a speech prepared. I don't know how true that is. Obviously, no way of verifying that. But, speaking from experience in the 15, 16 years I've been doing this, when I got into this, because I was a curious bystander, if you want to call it that, I didn't think we'd ever be at this point. Not in my lifetime, at least. When you were involved with this on an OSI level, did you ever see this coming in the future where we are now? Or if I'd have asked you this question back in the 80s, would you have said, no chance? Completely no.
No, considering that everything, my office at Kirtland Air Force Base was in a vault, was literally in a vault, because everything I had on my desk, I had a special filing cabinet that had nothing but classified, all my classified work. I had to, file it in certain filing cabinets that has to be top secret. So, and so everything that I had access to was classified, almost everything. There was some that wasn't, but I would have never thought that any of that data that I was reading or having access to or being briefed on every day, or operations that I was running, which almost entirely was classified, at least secret, and mostly top secret, would ever see the light of day. No, I never thought that.
Are you impressed or shocked at the stuff that is kind of coming out now then, and guys like Grush coming forward, Jake Barber, and I believe there's other whistleblowers? We had Jason Sands on last week, and he alluded to there are guys waiting for Trump's executive order and maybe this Whistleblower Protection Act to be passed, and then they will come forward and speak. So,
well, yeah, I'm impressed with the certified whistleblowers, the people that can prove what they say. And one of the things that I helped the government do in 2022 is weed out the phonies. Okay. There were a lot of people out there that came forth and said, I did this, I did this, I was at Offutt Air Force Base, or I was at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, I was at Ellsworth, and I had UFOs. But when you did a deep dive into their the background, their military records and so forth, most of them didn't even have access to top secret material.
Yeah.
So, and I think there were a great deal of them weeded out. And then there's some that still are coming out and saying, I did this and I did that. And I always, I don't, if somebody wants to come out and say they did something, let them do it. Let the public decide. And I used to say, I used to try to say, I know you didn't do this. And I know that the story that you're saying is based on something somebody else has already said.
Yeah.
Then I decided, you know what? Say what you want to say. It's a free country. We got a First Amendment. So,
do you think, though, that, in your own opinion now, do you think that those people would be deliberately put into maybe the community to give misinformation to Congress inside the SCIF? Or do you think these are just, crazy people, maybe fantasists, or, got some mental health issues going on?
Well, there's certain people out there that are talking big. And when you go back and check, they have no connection at all with anyone within the House of Representatives or the Senate. Our group, I am a member of the Advanced Working Group, which are all retired intelligence officers.
Yeah.
Almost all entire intelligence officers are military intelligence officers. We meet quarterly, and we meet and we have meetings in Washington, D.C. or near Washington, D.C. And we talk, and we know the phonies, and we know the people out there that are telling the truth. And the Senate and the House of Representatives put out a list in January of 2025 to the DOD. The DOD put out a list to the Senate Intelligence Committee on who can prove that they did and were in a position within a government agency or military. And there's a lot of people out there talking now that claim to be, but they're not. They were never in that position. They just have a story to tell, and they tell the story. And maybe they were, and nobody knows about it, or maybe they're just making it up, or maybe the government is putting them out there to just inform the public, and that could be very well be. There's people out there that I just don't trust. I don't listen to them. I'm not going to say them on your show, but some people you've had on your show that I know to be phonies. It's let them speak. If they want to go out, people believe them, so be it.
Okay, so I guess off the back of what you've just said, bearing in mind, you said, a list was given to DOD, which, those names are never going to make it public. If you could give one piece of advice for maybe the people listening or anyone researching this topic, how should they be doing their due diligence in maybe who they're trusting or listening to? Because, it's, you kind of walk away from this thing kind of more confused than when you got into it sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. There's some people out there that tell the story and the story is real up until they start talking about the aliens, and that's when you can shut them off, because that didn't happen that way. And there's always people out there that will criticize somebody that's the people that really know the story. The people, I don't want to name people, but there were people that came out and supposedly there was a recovery by a helicopter and so forth. There were probably 100 people out there that created that same video at their home on a rug, and which we did. There were 4 of us that did this, and it was probably better filmed than the one that you saw. So you could
I know which video you were leading to, but
yeah,
who knows?
And and people claim to be this and that, and you check their military records, and they never did that. So, the thing about today, right now, you can get almost anything on anybody.
Yeah.
My DD Form 214 and my Form 8, which is a civilian, it's like a civilian DD Form. It's what I did as a civilian. It's out there on the internet. It's all over the internet. And the only thing that Greenwald complains about is the government told him that there's some information that he's trying to get on me that is still classified. And I know what that is, but it doesn't have anything to do with UFOs. It just has to do with my training. The training that I got was all classified. So that's all that he's not going to get any of that stuff. But so there's people out there that you want to believe them. I mean, I'm not going to anymore try to disillusion anybody.
Is there any advice or rule of thumb you can maybe give to the listeners to, because like you said before and you alluded to, there's so much rubbish on social media currently. How do people discern between that and know, what is real and what's not? And in this era of transparency that we're talking about, and maybe this sea change with the media and other, respected organizations, how does someone, Joe Public, who's looking into this, how do they make that discernment and know what is misinformation and what is, without sort of just playing the waiting game and seeing, staying objective and waiting for that bigger picture to come that might never come?
Jay, I think that would be my advice: is wait for the big picture to come, because it's very difficult to watch social media today and try to sort out the fact from fiction, because there's so much fiction out there, and there's people that purposely muddy the water because they don't believe in the subject. So now they want to make fun of it, and they put out things that are just not true. Try to verify things, and if somebody is putting a story out there, check their background on the internet. You can do that. Exactly. And there's this guy out there, and I don't know if anybody, he was heavily on X a long time ago. His name was Charles. He was a prisoner in a jail in Pennsylvania. I don't know if anybody ever listened to his story. And he brings me into it because I knew the OSI agent that handled it. And people found out that there was an Operation Society Hike where he was recruited as a kid. And we did. The OSI did do that. Recruit people at a younger age, bring them in to the program, sending them to college, sending them to counterintelligence school to make them counterintelligence officers. And he was involved in it, but then he robbed the bank or something, and he got in trouble and he was out of it. But he spread a lot of stuff out there. A lot of the stuff that he's talking about is factual, but there's a lot that isn't. So and he brings my name up because he said, "Well, you verified." Well, I don't think I verified. I was involved in the Society Hike. I verified the Mays, the OSI agent that handled him, that recruited him. I knew he's dead now. The OSI agent died some years ago, but I just verified that. But that's just one example of information that some of it's true and some of it's not true. And when you listen to people out there who are talking, there's like a good example of what happened in your country at Rendlesham Forest. There are absolute 100% legitimate security personnel that were there that reported it, and I believe them, and then there's some that weren't even there, that was off duty at the time, but jumped on the bandwagon and said, "Well, I was there, and I was." and you probably know those people.
Yeah.
I read the OSI report on that back in 1983, I think. And it was a really long report. And the reason I read that is because in 1980, we had a similar incident happen at Kirtland Air Force Base.
Wow.
Not the
That's
Benowitz case,
interesting.
landing. Yeah. So Colonel Law, who was the chief of counterintelligence for OSI, when I was up the headquarters for doing something for some reason, he said, "Hey, read this report." I knew nothing about it before I read the report.
Yeah.
It explained it all. It was some kind of an extraterrestrial landing. Colonel Holt had it all right, but there was a lot of the security policemen that lied and failed the polygraph. So that's just one example of people trying to get the day. They're a day on a bandwagon, so to speak, and they weren't involved.
Yeah, back to the the OSI impetus with this. Could those people be, have been got to and they've been almost planted into that scenario to kind of muddy the waters? Could that be a thing?
I guess that could be. There's the possibility of it, but because all the reports that were done by MOD and by even the local police, there was a couple different reports from the local constabulary there, constables, and connect that to the radar and others. Really told the whole story. Those guys didn't have to go out. These guys that are lying didn't have to go out and say things because there wasn't any benefit to the government if they were disinformation officers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but like when you think about it, 43 years on, we're still debating this. So, there's all this new information, and yet we still go back to Roswell in 47, Bentwaters 83. And we'll probably still be sat here debating it in another 10, 15 years. I hope not.
Yeah.
But I imagine that's to be the case. But I guess, and I wanted to save this to the last, and this will satisfy the people that wanted to know about, obviously, the story of Paul Benowitz. I've stayed away from that because I think that you've explained that on many occasions. But to satisfy those people that, still hang on to that, if there was one thing that you could do different in that whole scenario, what would it be? And how would that look these days in 2026?
There were parts of the operation plan that called for us to go after some friends of Paul's, not Paul himself, because Paul couldn't be changed. We did everything we could to change it, make Paul believe something. He already was believing it. We couldn't have told him not to because he would have said, "No, I believe in it." But we went after some other people and which really muddied the water. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes was bringing in Bill Moore. We brought Bill Moore in because he was already an asset to U.S. intelligence, and Bill was like a bull in a china shop. He did more harm than good, and I actually was the one that recommended bringing Bill in because Bill knew Paul, but it didn't work out at all, and I think that was one of the big mistakes. And also Hynek and Leo Sprinkle, who came in and was working independently with with the National Security Agency and not with OSI. I think that was another thing that we shouldn't have done. And but those are the things I probably would have changed. Yeah,
mistakes were made, I guess. But as they say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Especially 40 years on. I guess obviously it's close to 1 a.m. here in the UK. So I wanted to ask one final question. You've spent decades around intelligence operation, secrecy, and the UFO issue. In your opinion, what percentage of the modern UFO or UAP narrative is genuine mystery, and what percentage is misunderstanding, and what percentage is deliberate manipulation? And if you could give us your honest breakdown on that.
Oh, wow. Difficult question. The government has a plan. I'm pretty sure the government has a plan, a release plan. I think they have to. They have to have. And one of the things that people don't realize is in the United States, in our form of government, we have a president that's only in there for 8 years at the maximum.
Yeah.
You know, he's in there for either 4 years or 8 years, and he's gone. And no telling what happens after he leaves office. And we have a Congress. Some congressmen and women have been in there for 30 years. Some senators have been around 30 years. But they are a separate branch of the government. They are not involved in the executive branch. We have 3 distinct branches of the government. Now, in order for our government to work effectively, which I don't think it is today, is the executive branch has to cooperate with the legislative branch in order to get any of this out.
Yeah.
The Senate has no authority to classify or declassify. The only person in our government that can classify or declassify himself is the president. He can decide that all this stuff can be declassified today or tomorrow or the next day. But he's relying on people within the intelligence community and the military to make those decisions.
Right.
So in order for disclosure to ever happen effectively, there has to be a cooperation between the executive branch and all agencies within the executive branch.
Okay.
Because right now, the president is, of course, he's in charge of the executive branch, and the CIA is not cooperating with disclosure. DOD is not cooperating with the DIA. I mean, there's very little cooperation.
Yeah.
Within the executive branch of our government, and until they get on the same sheet of music, so to speak, and pushing Congress into making laws that will force the government to do that. But you go back to this. The Senate can pass a law tomorrow.
Right.
Send it over to the House of Representatives. They have to pass the same law. And then it has to go to the president to be signed. If the president doesn't sign it or vetoes it, we're right back to square one.
Yeah.
So that is the idiosyncrasy of our government and the, I call it the contraption that is fighting against disclosure.
Okay. And how much, you know, or to what level or lesser degree do you think Trump has been briefed?
I know the person that had briefed President Trump, and he's well, let me say this: Trump 45, Trump in 2017, his first term in office. I know the person that briefed him, and he's a member of the Advanced Working Group. But he only briefed him up to what the president wanted. Just like going back to Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter wanted to know, but when they started telling President Carter details, he doesn't want to know it. I don't want to know it. Get out of here. Get out of my office.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, President Reagan wanted to know everything. It was an endless amount of information that he kept asking for. Now, I don't know about Bush 1. No one ever told me. I don't know about Clinton. I have no idea. Bush 2, he was briefed. You got to understand that President Bush 2, he was a pilot in the United States Air Force. He went to pilot training. He flew F-106s. He had the pilot briefing, and every single pilot in the United States Air Force, I'm sure in the Navy too, in the Marine Corps, but I don't know that for a fact. But I know in the Air Force that every single pilot was given a briefing that pertained to extraterrestrial crafts. Every single pilot. Yeah. Because it's a certain identification for different types of extraterrestrial vehicles. And they were given that. So I know that Bush 2 knew something about it. And I don't know who briefed him. I know Obama was briefed too. And Obama was very interested in the subject up to a point. And so I think, I don't know the second time around if Trump was briefed the second time around when he came in 2021 or 2026. I don't know about Biden either. I don't know whether he was briefed or not.
Yeah, I did read something in the group that I was in that perhaps people such as Robert Bigelow, who obviously has donated heavily to the Trump campaign when he was running for election, that one of the caveats to these donations was that Trump push on this issue. Do you think that, lobbyists and certain people behind the scenes are putting pressure on the US president maybe to disclose?
I think that could very well be. I know Robert Bigelow. When I worked for Dr. Putoff, Bigelow was involved in a lot of different DARPA projects. He still is. He has a fantastic facility out in Vegas. He also has a facility out near Nevada test site. I've been at both facilities. Robert Bigelow has a great deal of knowledge in the subject, but that's all I'm going to say. I don't know any more whether he tried to convince Trump or not. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it would make a lot of sense. Again, different avenues why this, since 2017 seems to have picked up pace. And I guess, it kind of blows my mind to where we're at now. And, the fact that, just on Fox News the other day, they were talking about reptilian beings and, not without that sly smirk and the X-Files music booming in the background. It's like there has been a sea change to how the media perceives this topic. And I think that's a good thing because that encourages discussion. It encourages podcasts such like this. But where we end up and, what this looks like in, 3 to 4 years, who knows? But again, go on.
I think in a year we'll know more than we do now. We won't know everything we want to know, but I think we'll know more within the next year. Yeah, and I appreciate you inviting me on. I enjoy being here, and if you want to do this again sometime, I'll be more than happy to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that, Rich. Enjoyed your company when you were over in the UK, and we got to hang out for a couple of days, and we had a good time.
Yeah, we did. I really appreciate your hospitality. You showed me around a great area. We had a great dinner, 2 dinners together, and we had a lot of good conversation in the UK.
It's brilliant, buddy. But no, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. And, I probably echo the sentiment for Coley. We'd love to have you back on at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you, Rick, so much. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much, sir.
That was cool. It was awesome to sit back because I've interviewed, he's been on about 4 times. So I've interviewed, that was really awesome to sit back and watch that all play out. You did a really good job. And I like, always tell people, it doesn't matter how much you don't like the information. This is so important to hear. This is so important to understand how it's structured, how it works on the inside, how all of this plays out. But
well, I kind of wanted to give that insight maybe to the viewers tonight. Like, as I said to Rick, the Benowitz case, he's spoken about it in so many different occasions that it's kind of like, it was a serious case, and I appreciate the sensitivity of that. But it's been done, and other people, other podcasters have asked those questions. So let's go behind and find out, the mindset and the psyche of someone that assumes that role, which I think a lot of people don't sort of understand. They just go, oh, bad person, he's done a terrible thing, and that's it. But you need to hear someone's story. And I was fortunate when I met Rick, 5-6 years ago in Blackpool, that he indulged me with that. And it made me look at this whole thing in a different light. And, I think there's something we can learn from, hopefully putting out good shows like this, asking the right questions, or I hope so, and educating our viewers to maybe give them a different perspective on things, because I don't think that's done enough in this subject.
It's really so true, too. That's so true what you just said right there. And as much as we'd all like to say, nobody knows. Rick comes from a long line. He's got an uncle, a father, I believe, and a grandfather. So this is something that's so different. You don't know at the time how you're going to react. You don't know that part you're going to play. But like you said, we've been there. We've done that. It's important to understand why this happened. Maybe we can prevent something like this from happening again. You don't know, but you have to. It's hard to digest. I get that. It was for me at points.
But, and exactly for anyone who's new coming into this, or like myself all those years ago, curious bystander that kind of inquires into this and the minefield that exists. How do you discern between good information and crap information? And you're taking in both from both sides, but how do you know? Unless you're seasoned. And even I get caught out at times, and I'll be honest about that. There's things where I believe it to be true, and then I later find out it isn't. As yourself or one of the other friends. And, constantly learning and growing. I definitely don't know it all. I don't think anyone does, maybe a select few.
You can see somebody. When I first got into this, I didn't know the ins and outs. I trusted and I believed, but I've learned. And like you have too, you kind of have to take some whomps on the head. But, as like it comes out, I'm not above admitting it. And let's call it, like I was wrong here, like, or I, grown since then. Let's go. But that's really hard for some people. That's really hard.
I think so. But again, get rid of the ego side of this, which, sadly, I think a lot of researchers and investigators have, gatekeepers, if you want to call it that, to information. And no one's got an exclusivity on this, although at least they shouldn't, in my opinion.
No.
It's great to credit other people with their work, and they've put in the leg room on this stuff. And I'll always do that, if I talk about Paul stuff or any one of my friends, Steve Merrer, any of the guys that I associate here with in the UK, I'll always credit them. It's not my stuff. I'm just regurgitating that and, sort of retelling the story without the Chinese whispers, and then kind of adding my 2 cents to that. Opinion's a great thing, isn't it? But at the end of the day, I suppose what interests us in this subject is, we search for truth, but we also postulate along the way. And that's the fun side of this. That's what I do with Robbie or any one of my buddies. We kick around ideas and say, hey, what about this? And do you know what? Sometimes it's something that you've never even considered, and you're like, shit, didn't really think of that. Now I feel a total dumbass.
But when you're an experiencer, though, I think a part of you, it's so subjective, that you do get caught up. You want answers. There is certain parts of it, if we had all of those, but, we get you get caught in that. You get trapped in that. But it's so good that we have balance. And I love the fact that the questions are being asked, because other than, I'm telling you, some people wouldn't come near this. And I'm thinking, this is right here is the perfect opportunity to understand, to grow, to know.
And if we can carry on doing that in a similar vein, you know, it's I think it's good. You know, there's a lot of people putting out what I call fluff content, you know, for the sake of likes and monetization and all that ugly stuff. And I get people have got to make money, but when you compromise the truth for likes, then I lose interest, speaking to me personally. And I'll switch off, and I have done with many, many podcasts that exist out there. So, you know, I hope your viewers really enjoyed that. I hope it was a little bit different to the other shows Rick's been on.
I absolutely. And the thing of it is, you nailed it right there. It's like all of these things, this channel has never, ever been under, I have kept it outside of, you know, anybody controlling the content, anybody. Yeah. And that is very important, because so many people take the deal. There's always a deal. I can tell you about the deal that was offered to me. You know, it's like, and you turn it down, they don't offer you a deal that's not hard to resist. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
You stay above that. It's so important, this information. That's why I stand by it. So I'm so excited and so glad to have you on the team, and doing these shows are just like, it is. I think we really can push this into a good direction.
Absolutely. And you know, I've said to you in private, you know, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. You know, you've got a great core of listeners that seem really engaged in this subject. And you know, one thing I will say is apologize if I don't get round to asking your question or the guest doesn't see it. You know, when the conversation's flowing, it's hard to.
You're doing good. You're doing great. That's why there's two of us. So we had already asked to comment. I didn't think that they had missed it. So, and some of them you can't get to because it is out of context, and you want to keep that dialogue going. Yeah, so, absolutely. You know, that's understandable. And then we'll just start, and we can ask Rick on this. You know, I'll get back to them. But you're doing great. You really are. You're doing great.
Let's do part 3 though, because you know, time constraints with it being in the UK, and it's now like 1:45 in the morning. Yes. And as I keep reiterating, it takes me a good hour to an hour and a half to switch my brain off.
I know. We appreciate you being here. Yeah. You can't just leave one of these shows. It takes me a long time. I get so excited. I have to wind down. I'm like, oh, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. But yeah, Jay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what have we got next?
I'll have to look. I have a couple things I'm throwing around. I'll let you know, but I don't have anybody definitive. But we've got a few good options. I'll message you about it tomorrow. You don't have to get to them tonight.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. You know, there were some really quite concise questions asked in the chat tonight. I just apologize that I couldn't get round to asking all of them. So. Yeah, forgive me on that, audience. And we'll see you same bat time, same bat channel.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's going to become like a catchphrase now, isn't it? Yeah,
I love it. To the bat cave, to the bat phone.
Thank you, guys. And enjoy the rest of your day. For those of you that are stateside, I'm going to get some much needed beauty sleep.
Sounds great. We'll be in contact. Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody in chat. We do have Amy Murphy and the girls Third Eye live. They're coming on next. So I just want to thank real quickly Michigan Sandman. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciated. Moon at Noon. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. Amy, thank you, girl, so much. Welcome to the new SNX member. We're glad to have you. Lucky to have you. And Benno, thank you so much. I'm going to be flipping this around here at 7:15. I'll be coming back with Amy Murphy. Oh, that's awesome. You have Amy Murphy. If you guys have not seen her show, she's been on plenty of times. She's absolutely awesome. We're going to bring her back and this time she's going to have her team with her. So we're really excited and looking forward to it. Thank you again. just on the bottom of my heart, your support and everybody being here, I really appreciate that. Jay did fantastic. It's awesome to have him along. We're very happy to do that. And, we got Maya on Mondays, Pops Tuesdays, and Pops panel definitely coming up this Monday. So mark it down on your calendars. And again, thank you for taking the journey into the unknown. I'm Coley, also known as ColeyUFO, and I will be back on at 7:15. Until next time.